Hello, 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 and welcome to Kinitsugis Storytime. I am your host, Kinitsugi, and today we are going to continue reading Percy Jackson. I hope you will all join me. I believe we left off on chapter 4. That's right. Chapter 4. My mother teaches me bullfighting. We tore through the night along the dark country roads. Wind slammed against the Camaro. Rain lashed the windshield. I don't know how my mom could see anything, but she kept her foot on the gas. Every time there was a flash of lightning, I looked at Grover sitting next to me in the back seat, and I wondered if I'd gone insane, or if he was wearing some kind of shag carpet trousers. But no, the smell was the one I remembered from kindergarten field trips to the petting zoo. Landloin, like from wool. The smell of a wet barnyard animal. All I could think to say was, "So you and my mom know each other?" Grover's eyes flitted to the rearview mirror, though there were no cars behind us. "Not exactly," he said. "I mean, we've never met in person, but she knew I was watching you." "Watching me?" "Keeping tabs on you, making sure you were okay. But I wasn't faking about being your friend," he added hastily. "I am your friend." Uh, what are you exactly?" "That doesn't really matter right now." "It doesn't matter? From the waist down, my best friend is a donkey." Grover let out a sharp, throaty blah. I'd heard him make that sound before, but I'd always assumed it was a nervous laugh, and now I realized it was more of an irritated bleat. "Goat!" he cried. "What?" "I'm a goat, from the waist down." "You just said it didn't matter." "Blah. There are satyrs who would trample you underhoof for such an insult." "Whoa, wait. Satyrs? You mean like Mr. Bruner's myths?" "Were those old ladies at the fruit stand a myth, Percy? Was Miss Dodds a myth?" "So you admit there was a Mrs. Dodds?" "Of course. Then why—" "The less you knew, the fewer monsters you'd attract," Grover said. "Like that should be perfectly obvious. We put mist over the human's eyes. We hoped you'd think the kindly one was a hallucination, but it was no good. You started to realize who you are." "Who? Wait a minute. What do you mean?" The weird bellowing noise rose up again somewhere behind us, closer than before. Whatever was chasing us was still on our trail. "Percy," my mom said, "there's too much to explain and not enough time. We have to get you to safety." "Safety from what? Who's after me?" "Oh, nobody much," Grover said, obviously still miffed about the donkey comment. Just the Lord of Death and a few of his bloodthirstiest minions." "Grover!" "Sorry, Miss Jackson. Could you drive faster, please?" I tried to wrap my mind around what was happening, but I couldn't do it. I knew this wasn't a dream. I had no imagination whatsoever. I could never dream up something this weird. My mom made hard left. We swerved onto a narrower road, racing past darkened farmhouses and wooded hills and pick your own strawberries sign on the white picket fences. "Where are we going?" I asked. "The summer camp I told you about." My mother's voice was tight. She was trying for my sake not to be scared. "The place your father wanted to send you." "The place you didn't want me to go?" "Please, dear," my mother begged. "This is hard enough. Try to understand. You're in danger." "Because some old ladies cut yarn." "Those weren't old ladies," Grover said. "Those were the Fates. Do you know what it means? The fact that they appeared in front of you. You only do that when you're about to, when someone's about to die." "Whoa, you said you." "No, I didn't. I said someone." "You meant you, as in me." "I meant you like someone, not you. "Boys," my mom said. She pulled the wheel hard to the right, and I got a glimpse of the figure she'd swerved to avoid, a fluttering shape now lost behind us in the storm. "What was that?" I asked. "We're almost there," my mother said, ignoring my question. "Another mile. Please, please." I didn't know where there was, but I found myself leaning forward in the car, anticipating, wanting us to arrive. Outside, nothing but rain and darkness, the kind of empty countryside you'd get way out on the tip of Long Island. I thought about Mrs. Dodds, the moment when she changed to the thing with the pointed teeth and the leathery wings. My limbs went numb from delayed shock. She really hadn't been human. She'd meant to kill me. When I thought about Mr. Brunner, the sword he had thrown me, before I could ask Grover about that, the hair rose on the back of my neck. There was a blinding flash, a jaw-rattling boom, and our car exploded. I remember feeling weightless, like I was being crushed, fried, hosed down, all at the same time. I peeled my forehead off my back at the driver's seat, and I said, "Ow!" "Percy," my mom shouted. "I'm okay." So sorry. I tried to shake off the daze. I wasn't dead, and the car hadn't really exploded. We'd swerved into a ditch. Our driver's side doors were wedged in the mud. The roof had cracked open like an eggshell, and rain was pouring in. Lightning. That had been the only explanation. We'd been blasted right off the road. Next to me in the back seat was a big, motionless lump. "Grover?" He was slumped over, blood trickling from the side of his mouth. I shook his furry hip, thinking, no, even if you are half barnyard animal, you're my best friend, and I don't want you to die. And then he groaned. "Food." And I knew there was hope. "Percy," my mother said, "we have to." Her voice faltered. I looked back. In a flash of lightning, through the mud-spattered rear windshield, I saw a figure lumbering towards us on the shoulder of the road. The sight of it made my skin crawl. It was a dark silhouette of a huge guy, like a football player. He seemed to be holding a blanket over his head. His top half was bulky, fuzzy. His upraised hands made it look like he had horns. I swallowed hard. "Who is Percy?" my mother said, deadly serious. "Get out of the car." My mother threw herself against the driver's side door. It jammed shut in the mud, and I tried mine. Stuck too. I looked up desperately at the hole in the roof. Might have been an exit, but the edges were sizzling and smoking. "Climb out of the passenger side," my mother told me. "Percy, you have to run. Do you see that big tree?" What? Another flash of lightning, and through the smoking hole in the roof I saw what tree she meant. A huge, White House, Christmas-sized pine tree at the crest of the nearest hill. "That's the property line," my mom said. "Get over that hill and you'll see a big farmhouse down in the valley. Run and don't look back. Yell for help. Don't stop until you reach the door." "Mom, you're coming too?" Her face was pale and her eyes were sad when she looked at the ocean. "No," I shouted. "You are coming with me. Help me carry Grover." "Food," Grover moaned. A little louder. The man with the blanket on his head kept coming towards us, making grunting, snorting noises. As he got closer, I realized he couldn't be holding a blanket over his head because of his hands. Huge, meaty wads of flesh were swinging at his sides. There was no blanket, meaning the bulky, fuzzy mass that was too big to be his head was his head. And the points that looked like horns. "He doesn't want us," my mother told me. "He wants you. Besides, I can't cross the property line." "But we don't have time, Percy. Go. Please." I got mad then. Mad at my mother. At Grover, the goat, at the thing with the horns that was lumbering towards us slowly and deliberately, like a bull. I climbed over Grover and pushed the door open into the rain. "We're going together." "Come on, Mom." "I told you." "Mom, I am not leaving you. Help me with Grover." I didn't wait for her answer. I scrambled outside, dragging Grover from the car. He was surprisingly light, but I couldn't have carried him very far if my mom hadn't come to my aid. Together, we draped Grover's arms over our shoulders and started stumbling uphill through wet, waist-high grass. Glancing back, I got my first clear look at the monster. He was about 7 feet tall, easy. His arms and legs like something from the cover of Muscle Man magazine. Bulging triceps and biceps, a bunch of other seps, all stuffed like baseballs under vein web skin. He wore no clothes, except underwear. I mean, bright white, Fruit of the Looms, which would have been funny except for the top half of his body. Coarse brown hair started around his belly button and got thicker as it reached his shoulders. His neck was a mass of muscle and fur leading up to his enormous head, which had a snout as long as my arm, snotty nostrils, and a gleaming brass ring. Cruel black eyes and horns. Enormous black and white horns with points you just couldn't get from an electric sharpener. I recognized the monster, all right. He had been one of the first stories Mr. Brunner told us, but he couldn't be real. I blinked the rain out of my eyes. "That's That's Face V's son, my mother said. I wish I'd known how badly I want to kill you. But he's a. Don't say his name, she warned. Names have power. The pine tree was still way too far, 100 meters uphill at least, and I glanced behind me again. The bull man hunched over our car, looking in the windows, or not looking exactly, more like snuffling, nuzzling. Wasn't sure why he bothered since we were only about 15 meters away. Food, Grover moaned. Shh, I told him, Mom, what is he doing? Doesn't he see us? Sight and hearing are terrible, she said. He goes by smell, but we'll figure out where we are soon enough. As if on cue, the bull man bellowed in rage. He picked up Gabe's Camaro by its torn roof, the chassis creaking and groaning. He raised the car over his head and threw it down the road. It slammed into wet asphalt and skidded in a shower of sparks for about half a mile before coming to a stop. The gas tank exploded. Not a scratch, I remember Gabe saying. Oops. Percy, my mom said, when he sees us, he'll charge. Wait till the last second and then jump out of the way, directly sideways. He can't change direction very well once he's charging. Do you understand? How do you know all of this? I've been worrying about an attack for a long time. I should have expected this. I was selfish, keeping you near me. Keeping me near you, but... Good heavens. Another bellow of rage, and the bull man started tromping uphill. He'd smelled us. The pine tree was only a few more meters, but the hill was getting steeper and slicker, and Grover wasn't getting any lighter. The bull man closed in. Another few seconds, and he'd be on top of us. My mother must have been exhausted, but she shouldered Grover. Go, Percy. Separate. Remember what I said. I didn't want to split up, but I had the feeling that she was right. It was our only chance. I sprinted to the left, turned, and saw the creature bearing down on me. His black eyes glowed with hate. He reeked like rotten meat. He lowered his head and charged, those razor-sharp horns aimed straight at my chest. The fear in my stomach made me want to bolt, but that wouldn't work. I could never outrun this thing, so I held my ground, and at the last moment I jumped to the side. The bull man stormed past like a freight train and then bellowed with frustration and turned, but not towards me this time, towards my mother, who was setting Grover down in the grass. We'd reached the crest of the hill. Down the other side, I could see a valley, just as my mother had said, and the lights of a farmhouse glowing yellow through the rain. But that was half a mile away. We'd never make it. The bull man grunted, pawing at the ground, kept eyeing my mother, who was now retreating slowly downhill, back towards the road, trying to lead the monster away from Grover. Run, Percy, she told me. I can't go any further. Run. But I just stood there, frozen in fear as the monster charged her. She tried to sidestep, as she told me to do, but the monster had learned its lesson. His hand shot out and grabbed her by the neck as she tried to get away. He lifted her as she struggled, kickling, pummeling the air. Mom! She caught my eyes, managed to choke out one last word. Go. Then, with an angry roar, the monster closed his fist around my mother's neck, and she dissolved before my eyes, melting into light, a shimmering golden form if she were a holographic projection. A blinding flash, and she was simply gone. No. Anger replaced my fear. Newfound strength burned in my limbs, the same rush of energy I'd got when Miss Dodds grew talons. The bull man bore down on Grover, who lay helpless in the grass. The monster hunched over, stiffing my best friend, as if he were about to lift Grover up and make him dissolve too. I simply couldn't allow that. I stripped off my red rain jacket. Hey! I screamed, waving the jacket, running to one side of the monster. Hey, stupid! Ground beef! Roar! The monster turned towards me, shaking his meaty fists. I had an idea. A stupid idea, but better than no idea at all. Put my back to the big pine tree and waved my red jacket in front of the bull man, thinking I'd jump out of the way at the last moment. But it didn't happen like that. The bull man charged too fast, his arms out to grab me whichever way I tried to dodge. Time slowed down. My legs tensed, couldn't jump sideways, so I leapt straight up, kicking off from the creature's head, using it as a springboard, turning in midair and landing on his neck. How did I do that? I didn't have time to figure it out. A millisecond later, the monster's head slammed into the tree, and the impact nearly knocked my teeth out. The bullman staggered around, trying to shake me. I locked my arms around his horns to keep from being thrown. Thunder and lightning were still going strong. The rain was in my eyes. The smell of rotten meat burned into my nostrils. The monster shook himself around, bucked like a rodeo bull. He should have just backed up into the tree and smashed me flat, but I was starting to realize that this thing really had only one gear forward. Meanwhile, Grover started groaning in the grass. I wanted to yell at him to shut up, but the way I was getting tossed around, if I opened my mouth, I'd bite my own tongue off. Food! Grover moaned. The bullman wheeled towards him, pawed at the ground again, and got ready to charge. I thought about how he'd squeezed the life out of my mother, made her disappear in a flash of light, and rage filled me like a high-octane fuel. I got both hands around one horn and I pulled backwards with all my might. The monster tensed, gave a surprised grunt, and then snap. The bullman screamed, flung me through the air. I landed flat on my back in the grass. My head smacked against a rock. When I sat up, my vision was blurry, but I had a horn in my hands, a ragged bone weapon the size of a knife. The monster charged. Without thinking, I rolled to one side and came up kneeling. As the monster barreled past, I drove the broken horn straight into his side, right under his furry ribcage. The bullman roared in agony. He flailed, clawing at his chest, and then began to disintegrate. Not like my mother in a flash of golden light, but like crumbling sand, blown away in chunks by the wind, the same way Miss Dodds had burst apart. The monster was gone. The rain had stopped, and the storm still rumbled, but only in the distance. I smelled like livestock. My knees were shaking. My head felt like I was splitting open. I was weak and scared and trembling with grief. I had just seen my mother vanish, and I wanted to lie down and cry. But there was Grover, needing my help, so I managed to haul him up and stagger down into the valley, towards the lights at the farmhouse. I was crying, calling for my mother, but I held on to Grover. I wasn't going to let him go. The last thing I remember is collapsing on a wooden porch, looking up at a ceiling fan circling above me, moths flying around a yellow light, stern faces, a familiar-looking bearded man, and a pretty girl. Blonde hair curled like Cinderella's. They both looked down at me, and the girl said, "He's the one. He must be." "Silence, Annabeth," the man said. "He's still conscious. Bring him inside." Chapter 5. I Play Pinnacle with a Horse. I had weird dreams, full of barnyard animals. Most of them wanted to kill me, and the rest wanted food. I must have woken up several times, but what I heard and saw made no sense, so I just passed out again. I remember lying in a soft bed, being spoon-fed something that smelled like buttered popcorn, only it was pudding. The girl with the curly blonde hair hovered over me, smirking as she scraped drips off my chin with the spoon. When she saw my eyes open, she asked, "What will happen at the summer solstice?" I managed to croak, "What?" She looked around, as if afraid someone would overhear. "What's going on? What was stolen? We've only got a few weeks." "Sorry," I mumbled. "I don't." Somebody knocked on the door. The girl quickly filled my mouth with pudding. The next time I woke up, the girl was gone. A husky blonde dude, like a surfer, stood in the corner of the bedroom, keeping watch over me. He had blue eyes, at least a dozen of them, on his cheeks, his forehead, the back of his hands. When I finally came around for good, there was nothing weird about my surroundings except they were nicer than I was used to. I was sitting in a deck chair on a huge porch, gazing around the meadow at the green hills in the distance. The breeze smelled like strawberries. There was a blanket over my legs and a pillow behind my neck. All that was great, but my mouth felt like a scorpion had been using it for a nest. My tongue was dry and nasty, and every one of my teeth hurt. On the table next to me was a tall drink. It looked like iced apple juice, with a green straw and a paper parasol stuck through a maraschino cherry. My hand was so weak that I almost dropped the glass once I got my fingers around it. "Careful," a familiar voice said. Grover was leaning against the porch railing, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. Under one arm, he cradled a shoebox. He was wearing blue jeans, Converse high hops, and a bright orange t-shirt that said Camp Half-Blood. Just plain old Grover, not the goat boy. So maybe it had been a nightmare. Maybe my mom was okay, we were still on vacation, and we'd stopped here at this big house for some reason, and you saved my life, Grover said. At least, the least I could do. I went back to the hill. I thought you might want this. Reverently, he placed the shoebox in my lap. Inside was a black and white bull's horn, the base jagged from being broken off, the tip splattered with dried blood. It hadn't been a nightmare. The Minotaur. Percy, it isn't a good idea. That's what they call it in Greek myths, isn't it? I demanded. The Minotaur, half man, half bull. Grover shifted uncomfortably. You've been out for 2 days. How much do you remember? My mom. Is she really? He looked down. I stared across the meadow. There were groves of trees, a winding stream, acres of strawberries spread out under the blue sky. The valley was surrounded by rolling hills, and the tallest one, directly in front of us, was the one with the huge pine tree on top. Even that looked beautiful in the sunlight. My mother was gone, and the whole world should be black and cold. Nothing should look beautiful. I'm sorry, Grover sniffed. I'm a failure. I'm the worst satyr in the world. He moaned, stopping his foot so hard that it came off. The Converse high top came off. The inside was filled with styrofoam, except for a hoof-shaped hole. Oh, sticks, he mumbled. Thunder rolled across a clear sky. He struggled to get his hoof back into the fake foot. I thought, well, that settles it. Grover was a satyr. I was ready to bet that if I shaved his curly brown hair, I'd find tiny horns on his head, but I was too miserable to care what satyrs existed or even minotaurs. All that meant was that my mom really had been squeezed into nothingness, dissolved into that yellow light. I was alone, an orphan, and I would have to live with Smelly Gabe? No, that was never going to happen. I would live on the streets first. I would pretend I was 17 and join the army. I'd do something. Grover was still sniffling. The poor kid, poor goat, satyr, whatever, looked as if he expected to be hit. It wasn't your fault. Yes, it was. I was supposed to protect you. Did my mother ask you to protect me? No, that's my job, but I'm a keeper, or at least I was. But why? I suddenly felt dizzy, my vision swimming. Don't strain yourself, Grover said. Here. He helped me hold the glass and put the straw to my lips. I recoiled at the taste because I was expecting apple juice. It wasn't that at all. It was chocolate chip cookies. Liquid cookies. And not just any cookies. My mom's homemade blue chocolate chip cookies. Buttery, hot, the chips still melting. Drinking it, my whole body felt warm and good, full of energy. My grief still didn't go away, but it felt as if my mom had just brushed her hand against my cheek, given me a cookie the way she used to when I was small, and told me everything was going to be okay. Before I knew it, I drained the glass. I stared into it. Sure, I just had a warm drink, but the ice cubes hadn't even melted. Was it good? Grover asked. I nodded. What did it taste like? You sounded so wistful. I felt guilty. Sorry. I should have let you have a taste. His eyes got wide. No, that's not what I meant. I just wondered. Chocolate chip cookies, I said. My mom's. Homemade. He sighed. How do you feel? Like I could throw Nancy Boba Fett 100 meters. That's good, he said. That's good. I don't think you should risk drinking any more of that stuff. What do you mean? Took the empty glass from me gingerly, as if it were dynamite, and set it back on the table. Come on. Chiron and Mr. D are waiting. The porch wrapped all the way around the farmhouse. My legs felt wobbly, trying to walk that far. Grover offered to carry the Minotaur horn, but I held on to it. I'd paid for that souvenir the hard way. I was not going to let it go. As we came around the opposite end of the house, I caught my breath. We must have been on the north side of shore of Long Island, because on this side of the house, the valley marched all the way up to Long Island Sound, which glittered about half a mile in the distance. Between here and there, I simply couldn't process everything that I was seeing. The landscape was dotted with buildings that looked like ancient Greek architecture, an open air pavilion, an amphitheater, a circular arena, except that they all looked brand new, their white marble columns sparkling in the sun. In the nearby sandpit, a dozen high school aged kids and satyrs played volleyball. Canoes glided across a small lake. Kids in bright orange t shirts, like rovers, were chasing each other around a cluster of cabins nestled in the woods. Some shot targets had an archery range. Others rode horses down a wooded trail, and, unless I was hallucinating, some of their horses had wings. Down at the end of the porch, two men sat across each other at a card table. The blonde haired girl who'd spoon fed me popcorn flavored pudding was leaning on the porch rail next to them. The man facing me was small, but porky. He had a red nose, big watery eyes, and curly hair so black it was almost purple. He looked like those paintings of the baby angels. What do you call them? Hubbubs? No, cherubs. That's it. He looked like a cherub who turned middle aged in a trailer park. He wore a tiger pattern Hawaiian shirt, and he would have fit right in at one of Gabe's poker parties. Except I got the feeling this guy could have outgambled even my stepfather. That's Mr. D, Grover murmured to me. He's the camp director. Be polite. That girl, that's Annabeth Chase. Just a camper, but she's been here longer than just about anybody. And you already know Chiron. Pointed at the guy whose back was to me. First, I realized that he was sitting in the wheelchair, and then I recognized the tweed jacket, the thinning brown hair, and the scraggly beard. Mr. Bruner! I cried. The Latin teacher turned and smiled at me. His eyes had that mischievous glint they sometimes got in class when he pulled a pop quiz and made all the multiple choice answers B. Ah, good. Percy, he said. Now we have four for Pinnacle. He offered me a chair to the right of Mr. D, who looked at me with his bloodshot eyes and heaved a great sigh. Oh, I suppose I must say it. Welcome to Camp Half-Blood. There. Now don't expect me to be glad to see you. Thanks. I scooted a little further away from him because there's one thing I had learned from living with Gabe. It was how to tell when an adult's been hitting the happy juice. If Mr. Day was a stranger to alcohol, then I was a satyr. Annabeth, Mr. Bruner called to the blonde girl. She came forward. Mr. Bruner introduced us. This young lady nursed you back to health, Percy. Annabeth, my dear, why don't you go check on Percy's bunk? We'll be putting him in cabin 11 for now. Annabeth said, Sure, Chiron. She was probably my age, a couple of meters taller, a whole lot more athletic looking. With her deep tan and curly blonde hair, she was almost exactly what I thought a stereotypical California girl would look like. Except her eyes ruined the image. They were a startling gray, like storm clouds, pretty, but intimidating too, as if she were analyzing the best way to take me down in a fight. She glanced at the Minotaur horn in my hands and then back at me. I imagine she's going to say, You killed the Minotaur? Wow, you're so awesome. Or something like that. Instead, she said, You drool when you sleep. Then she sprinted off down the lawn, her blonde hair flying behind her. So, I said, anxious to change the subject, You, work here, Mr. Bruner? Not Mr. Bruner, the ex-Mr. Bruner said. I'm afraid that was a pseudonym. You may call me Chiron. Okay. Totally confused, I looked at the director. And Mr. D, does that stand for something? Mr. D stopped shuffling the cards. He looked at me as if I just belched loudly. Young man, names are powerful things. You don't just go around using them for no reason. Oh. Right. Sorry. I must say, Percy, Chiron Bruner broke in, I'm glad to see you alive. It's been a long time since I've made a house call to a potential camper. I hate to think that I've wasted my time. A house call? My year at Yancey Academy to instruct you. We have satyrs at most schools, of course, keeping a lookout, but Grover alerted me as soon as he met you. He sensed you were something special, so I decided to come upstate. I convinced the other Latin teacher to, take a leave of absence. I tried to remember the beginning of the school year. It seemed like so long ago, but I did have a fuzzy memory of there being another Latin teacher my first week at Yancey. And then, without explanation, he disappeared, and Mr. Bruner had taken the class. You came to Yancey just to teach me? I asked. Chiron nodded. Honestly, I wasn't sure about you at first. We contacted your mother, let her know we were keeping an eye on you in case you were ready for Camp Half-Blood, but you still had so much to learn. Nevertheless, you made it here alive, and that's always the first test. Grover, Mr. D said impatiently, are you playing or not? Yes, sir. Grover trembled as he took the fourth chair, though I didn't know why he should be so afraid of a pudgy little man in a tiger print Hawaiian shirt. You do know how to play Pinnacle, Mr. D eyed me suspiciously. I'm afraid not, I said. I'm afraid not, sir, he said. Sir, I repeated, like I was liking the camp director less and less. Well, he told me, it is, along with gladiator fighting and Pac-Man, one of the greatest games ever invented by humans. I would expect all civilized young men to know the rules. I'm sure the boy can learn, Chiron said. Please, I said, what is this place? What am I doing here, Chiron? Why would you go to the Yancey Academy just to teach me? Mr. D snorted. I asked the same question. The camp director dealt the cards. Grover flinched every time one landed in his pile. Chiron smiled at me sympathetically, the way he used to in Latin class, as if to let me know that no matter what my average was, I was his star student. He expected me to have the right answer. Percy, he said, did your mother tell you nothing? She said, I remembered her sad eyes, looking over the sea. She told me that she was afraid to send me here, even though my father had wanted her to. She said that once I was here, I probably couldn't leave. She wanted to keep me close to her. Typical, Mr. D said. That's how they usually get killed. Young man, are you bidding or not? What? I asked. He explained, impatiently, how you bid in Pinnacle, so I did. I'm afraid there's too much to tell, Chiron said. I'm afraid our usual orientation film won't be sufficient. Orientation film? I asked. No, Chiron said. Well, Percy, you know your friend Grover is a satyr. You know. He pointed to the box in the shoebox. Pointed to the horn in the shoebox, rather. That you have killed a minotaur. No small feat either, lad. What you may not know is the great powers are at work in your life. The gods, the forces you call the Greek gods, are very much alive. I stared at the others around the table. I waited for somebody to yell, not! But all I got was Mr. D yelling, oh, a royal marriage. Trick! Trick! He cackled as he rallied up his points. Mr. D, Grover asked timidly, if you're not going to eat it, could I have your Diet Coke can? Huh? Oh, all right. Grover bit a huge shard out of the empty aluminum can and chewed it mournfully. Wait, I told Chiron. You're telling me that there's such a thing as God? Well, now, Chiron said, God, capital G, God, that's a different matter altogether. We shan't deal with the metaphysical. Metaphysical? But you were just talking about. Ah, gods, plural. Yes, great beings that control the forces of nature and human endeavors. The immortal gods of Olympus. It's a smaller matter. Smaller? Yes, quite. The gods we discussed in Latin class. Zeus, I said. Hera. Apollo. You mean them. And there it was again. Distant thunder on a cloudless day. Young man, said Mr. D, I would really be less casual about throwing those names about if I were you. But they're stories, I said. They're myths to explain lightning and seasons and stuff. That's what people believed in before there was science. Science, Mr. D scoffed. And tell me, Percy Jackson. I flinched when he said my real name, which I never told to anybody. What will people think of your science 2,000 years from now? Mr. D continued. They will call it primitive mumbo-jumbo. That's what. Oh, I love mortals. They have absolutely no sense of perspective. They think they've come so far. And have they? Chiron. Look at this boy, and tell me. I wasn't liking Mr. D much, but there was something about the way he called me mortal, as if he wasn't. It was enough to put my lump in my throat, suggest why Grover was dutifully minding his cards, chewing his soda can, and keeping his mouth shut. Percy, Chiron said, you may choose to believe, or not, but the fact is, immortal means immortal. Can you imagine that, for a moment? Never dying, never fading, existing, just as you are, for all time. I was about to answer, off the top of my head, Sounded like a pretty good deal. The tone of Chiron's voice made me hesitate. You mean, whether people believe in you or not? I said. Exactly, Chiron exists. If you were a god, how would you like being called a myth? An old story to explain lightning? What if I told you, Percy Jackson, that someday people would call you a myth just to explain how little boys can get over losing their mothers? My heart pounded. He was trying to make me angry for some reason, but I wasn't going to let him. I said, I wouldn't like it, but I don't believe in gods. Oh, you better, Mr. D murmured. For one of them incinerates you, Grover said. Please, sir, he's just lost his mother. He's in shock. Lucky thing, too, Mr. D grumbled, playing a card. Bad enough I'm confined at this miserable job, working with boys who don't even believe. He waved his hands, and a goblet appeared on the table, as if the sunlight had bent momentarily and woven into air a glass. The goblet filled itself with red wine. My jaw dropped, but Chiron hardly looked up. Mr. D, he warned, your restrictions? Mr. D looked at the wine in feigned surprise. Dear me, he looked at the sky and yelled, Old habits. Sorry. More thunder. Mr. D waved his hand again, and a wine glass changed to a fresh can of Diet Coke. He sighed, unhappily, popped the top of the soda, and went back to his card game. Chiron winked at me. Mr. D offended his father a while back, took a fancy to a wood nymph that had been declared off limits. A wood nymph, I repeated, still staring at the Diet Coke like it was from outer space. Yes, Mr. D confessed. Father loves to punish me. First time, prohibition. Ghastly. Absolutely horrid 10 years. The second time, well, she really was pretty and I couldn't stay away. Second time, he sent me here. Half-Blood Hill. Summer camp. Brats like you. Be a better influence, he told me. Work with the youths rather than tearing them down. Ha! Absolutely unfair. Mr. D sounded about 6 years old, pouting like a little kid. And I stammered, your father is... The Immortales, Charon, Mr. D said. I thought you taught this boy the basics. My father is Zeus. Of course. I ran through the D names from Greek mythologies. Wine, the skin of a tiger, the satyrs that all seemed to work here, the way Grover cringed as if Mr. D were his master. You're Dionysus, I said, the god of wine. Mr. D rolled his eyes. What do they say these days, Grover? Do the children say? Ah, well, duh. Yes, Mr. D. Then well, duh, Percy Jackson. Do you think I was Aphrodite, perhaps? You're a god. Yes, child. A god. You. He turned to look at me straight on, and I saw a kind of purplish fire in his eyes, a hint that this whiny, plump little man was only showing me the tiniest bit of his true nature. I saw visions of grapevines choking unbelievers to death, drunken warriors insane with battle lust, sailors screaming as their hands turned into flippers, their faces elongating into dolphin spouts. I knew that if I pushed him, Mr. D would show me worse things. He would plant a disease in my brain that would leave me wearing a straitjacket in a rubber room for the rest of my life. Would you like to test me, child? He said quietly. No. No, sir. The fire died a little, and he turned back to his card game. I believe I win. Not quite, Mr. D, Chiron said. He sat down straight, tallied the points, and said, The game goes to me. I thought Mr. D was going to vaporize Chiron right out of his wheelchair, but he just sighed through his nose, as if he were used to being beaten by a Latin teacher. He got up. Grover rose too. I'm tired, Mr. D said. I believe I'll take a nap for the sing-along tonight. But first, Grover, we need to talk, again, about your less-than-perfect performance on this assignment. Grover's face beaded with sweat. Yes, sir. Mr. D turned to me. Cabin 11, Percy Jackson. And mind your manners. He swept into the farmhouse, Grover following miserably. Will Grover be okay? I asked Chiron. Chiron nodded, though he looked a bit troubled. Old Dionysus is really mad. He just hates his job. He's been, grounded, I guess you would say, and he can't stand waiting another century before he's allowed to go back up to Olympus. Mount Olympus, I said. You're telling me there really is a palace there? Well, now, there's Mount Olympus in Greece, and then there's the home of the gods, the convergent point of all their powers, which Did indeed used to be on Mount Olympus. It's still called Mount Olympus out of respect to the old ways, but the palace moves, Percy, just as the gods do. You mean the Greek gods are here? Like in America? Well, certainly. The gods move with the heart of the West. The what? Come now, Percy. What you call Western civilization. You think it's just an abstract concept. No, it's a living force, a collective consciousness that has burned bright for thousands of years. The gods are a part of it. You might even say they are the source of it, or at least they are tied so tightly to it that they couldn't possibly fade, not unless all of Western civilization were obliterated. The fire started in Greece, and then, as you well know, or as I hope you know, since you passed my course, the heart of the fire moved to Rome, and so did the gods. Different names, perhaps. Jupiter for Zeus, Venus for Aphrodite, and so on. Same forces, the same gods. And then they died. Died? No. Did the West die? The gods simply moved. To Germany, to France, to Spain for a little while. Wherever the flame was the brightest, the gods were there. They spent several centuries in England. All you need to do is look at the architecture. People do not forget the gods. Every place they've ruled for the last 3,000 years, you can see them in paintings and statues on your most important buildings. And yes, Percy, of course, they are now in your United States. Look at your symbol, the eagle of Zeus. Look at the statue of Prometheus in the Rockefeller Center. The Greek facades of your government buildings in Washington. I defy you to find any American city where the Olympians are not prominently displayed in multiple places. Like it or not, and believe me, plenty of people weren't very fond of Rome either. America is now the heart of the flame. It is the great power of the West, and so Olympus is here, and we are here. It was all too much, especially the fact that I seem to be included in Chiron's we, as if I were part of some club. Who are you, Chiron? Who am I? Chiron smiled. He shifted his weight if he was going to get up out of his wheelchair, but I knew that was impossible. He was paralyzed from the waist down. Who are you? He mused. Well, that's the question we all want answered, isn't it? But for now, we should get you a bunk, cabin 11. There are new friends to meet, and plenty of time for lessons tomorrow. Besides, there will be toasted marshmallows at the campfire tonight, and I simply adore them. And then he did, rise from his wheelchair. But there was something odd about the way he did it. His blankets fell away from his legs, but the legs didn't move. His waist kept getting longer, rising above his belt. At first I thought he was wearing a very long, very white velvet underwear, but as he kept rising out of the chair, taller than any man, I realized that the velvet underwear wasn't underwear. It was the front of an animal, muscle, sinew under coarse white fur. The wheelchair wasn't a chair. It was some kind of container, an enormous box on wheels, and it must have been magic because there's no way it could have held all of him. A leg came out, long and hobbly kneed, with a huge polished hoof. Then another front leg, then hindquarters. And then the box was empty, nothing but a metal shell with a couple of fake human legs attached. I stared at the horse who had just sprung from the wheelchair, a huge white stallion, but where its neck should be, the upper body of my Latin teacher smoothly grafted to the horse's trunk. What a relief, the centaur said. I've been cooped up in there for so long, my fetlocks have fallen asleep. Come now, Percy Jackson. Let's meet the other campers. Going to take a brief intermission here. And we're back. Chapter 6. I become supreme lord of the bathroom. Once I got over the fact my Latin teacher was a horse, we had a nice tour, though I was careful not to walk behind him. I'd done Pooper Scooper Patrol in Macy's Thanksgiving parade a few times, and I'm sorry, I did not trust Chiron's back end the way I trusted his front. Apologies. We passed the volleyball pit. Several of the campers nudged each other. One pointed to the Minotaur horn I was carrying. Another said, "That's him." Most of the campers were older than me. Their satyr friends were bigger than Grover, and all of them trotting around in orange Camp Half-Blood t-shirts, with nothing else to cover their bare, shaggy hindquarters. I wasn't normally shy, but the way they stared at me made me uncomfortable. I felt like they were expecting me to do a cartwheel or something. I looked back at the farmhouse. It was a lot bigger than I'd realized. 4 stories tall, sky blue with a white trim, like a upmarket seaside resort. I was checking out the Brass Eagle weather vane on top when something caught my eye. A shadow in the uppermost window of the attic gable. Something that moved the curtain just for a second, and I got the distinct impression I was being watched. "What's up there?" I asked Chiron. He looked where I was pointing, and his smile faded. "Just the attic." "Somebody lives there?" "No," he said with finality. "Not a single living thing." I got the feeling he was being truthful, but I was also sure something had moved that curtain. "Come along, Percy," Chiron said, his light-hearted tone now a little forced. "Lots to see." We walked through the strawberry fields where campers were picking bushels of berries while a satyr played a tune on a reed pipe. Chiron told me the camp grew a nice crop to export to New York restaurants in Mount Olympus. "Pays our expenses," he explained, "and the strawberries take almost no effort." He said Mr. D had this effect on fruit bearing plants. They just went crazy when he was around. It works the best with wine grapes, but Mr. D was restricted from growing those, so they grew strawberries instead. I watched the satyr playing his pipe. The music was causing lines of bugs to leave the strawberry patch in every direction, like refugees fleeing a fire. I wonder if Grover could work that kind of magic with music. I wondered if he was still inside the farmhouse, being lectured by Mr. D. "Grover won't get in too much trouble, will he?" I asked Chiron. "I mean, he was a good protector." "Really?" Chiron sighed. He shed the tweed jacket and draped it over the horse's back like a saddle. "Grover has big dreams, Percy. Perhaps bigger than are reasonable. To reach his goal, we must first demonstrate great courage by succeeding as a keeper, finding a new camper and bringing him safely to Half-Blood Hill. But he did that." "I might agree with you," Chiron said, "but it is not my place to judge. Dionysus and the Council of Cloven Elders must decide. I'm afraid they might not see this assignment as a success. After all, Grover lost you in New York. There's the unfortunate fate of your mother, and the fact that Grover was unconscious when you dragged him over the property line. The council might question whether this shows any courage on Grover's part." I wanted to protest. Nothing what happened was Grover's fault. I also felt that really, really guilty. If I hadn't given Grover the slip at the bus station, he might not have gotten in trouble. "He'll get a second chance, won't he?" Chiron winced. "I'm afraid that was Grover's second chance, Percy. The council was not anxious to give him another either, after what happened the first time, 5 years ago. Olympus knows. I advised him to wait longer before trying again. He's still so small for his age." "How old is he?" "Oh, 28. "What? And he's in the 6th grade?" "Satyrs mature half as fast as humans, Percy. Grover has been the equivalent of the middle school student for the past 6 years." "That's horrible." "Quite," Chiron agreed. "At any rate, Grover is a late bloomer, even by satyr standards, and not yet very accomplished at woodland magic. Alas, he was anxious to pursue his dream. Perhaps now he'll find some other career." "It's not fair," I said. "What happened the first time? Was it really so bad?" Chiron looked away quickly. "Let's move along, shall we?" But I wasn't quite ready to let the subject drop. Something had occurred to me when Chiron talked about my mother's fate, as if he were intentionally avoiding the word death. The beginnings of an idea, a tiny, hopeful fire started forming in my mind. "Chiron," I said, "the gods and Olympus and all that are real." "Yes, child." "Does that mean the underworld is real too?" Chiron's expression darkened. Yes, child, he paused, as if choosing his words carefully. There is a place where spirits go after death. But now, till we know more, I would urge you to put that out of your mind. What do you mean, until we know more? Come, Percy, let's see the woods. As we got closer, I realized how huge the forest was. It took up at least a quarter of the valley. Trees so small and thick, you could imagine nobody had been in there since the Native Americans. Chiron said, the woods are stocked, so you'd care to try your luck, but go armed. Armed with what? I asked. Armed with what? You'll see. Capture the flag is Friday night. Do you have your own sword and shield? My own. No, Chiron said. I don't suppose you do. I think a size 5 will do. I'll visit the armory later. I wanted to ask what kind of summer camp had an armory, but there was too much else to think about, so our tour continued. We saw the archery range, the canoeing lake, the stables, which Chiron didn't seem to like very much, the javelin range, the sing-along amphitheater, and the arena where Chiron said they held sword and spear fights. Sword and spear fights? I asked. Cabin challenges and all that, he explained. Not lethal, usually. Oh, yes, and then there's the mess hall. Chiron pointed to the outdoor pavilion framed in white Grecian columns on a hill overlooking the sea. There were dozens of stone picnic tables. No roof, no walls. What do you do when it rains? I asked. Chiron looked at me as if I'd gone a little weird. Still have to eat, don't we? I decided to drop the subject. Finally, he showed me the cabins. There were 12 of them, nestled in the woods by the lake. They were arranged in a U, with 2 at the base and 5 at the road, either side. They were, without a doubt, the most bizarre collection of buildings I'd ever seen, except for the fact that they each had a large brass number above the door, odds on the left side, evens on the right. They looked absolutely nothing alike. Number 9 had smokestacks like a tiny factory. Number 4 had tomato vines on the walls and a roof made out of real grass. 7 seemed to be made out of solid gold, which gleamed so much in the sunlight it was impossible to look at it. They all faced a commons area about the size of a soccer field, dotted with Greek statues, fountains, flower beds, and a couple of basketball hoops, which were more my speed. In the center of the field was a huge stone-lit fire pit. Even though it was a warm afternoon, the hearth smoldered. A girl about 9 years old was tending the flames, poking the coals with a stick. The pair of cabins at the head of the field, numbers 1 and 2, looked like his and hers mausoleums, big white marble boxes with heavy columns in front. Cabin 1 was the biggest, and the bulkiest of the 12. Its polished bronze doors shimmered like a hologram, so that from different angles, lightning bolts seemed to streak across them. Cabin 2 was more graceful somehow, with slimmer columns, garlanded with pomegranates and flowers. The walls were carved with images of peacocks. Zeus and Hera, I guessed. Correct, Chiron said. Their cabins look empty. Several of the cabins are. That's true. No one ever stays in 1 or 2. Okay, so each cabin had a different god, like a mascot. 12 cabins for 12 Olympians, but why would some be empty? I stopped in front of the first cabin on the left, Cabin 3. It wasn't high and mighty like Cabin 1, but long and low and solid. The outer walls were rough gray stones studded with pieces of seashell and coral, as if the slabs had been hewn straight from the bottom of the ocean floor. I peeked inside the open doorway, and Chiron said, "Oh, I wouldn't do that." But before he could call me back, I caught the salty scent of the interior, like the wind on the shore at Montauk. The interior walls glowed like abalone. There were 6 empty bunks and silk sheets turned down, but there was no sign that everyone had ever slept here. The place felt so sad and lonely. I was glad when Chiron put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Come along, Percy." Most of the cabins were crowded with campers. Number 5 was bright red. Real nasty paint job, as if the color had been splashed on with buckets and fists. The roof is lined with barbed wire. A stuffed wild boar's head hung over the doorway, and its eyes seemed to follow me. Inside, I could see a bunch of mean-looking kids, both girls and boys, arm wrestling and arguing with each other while rock music blared. The loudest was maybe a girl 13, maybe 14. She wore a size XXL Camp Half-Blood shirt under a camouflage jacket. She zeroed in on me and gave me an evil sneer. She reminded me of Nancy Bobo Fit. though the camper girl was much bigger and tougher looking, and her hair was long and stringy and brown instead of red. I kept walking, trying to stay clear of Chiron's hooves. We haven't seen any other centaurs, I observed. No, said Chiron slightly. My kinsmen are wild and barbaric folk, I'm afraid. You might encounter them in the wilderness or at major sporting events, but you won't see any here. You said your name was Chiron. Are you really? He smiled down at me. The Chiron from the stories, the trainer of Hercules and all that. Yes, Percy, I am. But shouldn't you be dead? Chiron paused, as if the question intrigued him. I honestly don't know about should be. The truth is, I can't be dead. You see, eons ago, when the gods granted my wish, I could continue the work I loved. I could be a teacher of heroes as long as humanity needed me. I gained much from that wish, and I gave up much. But I'm still here, so I can only assume I'm still needed. I thought about being a teacher for 3,000 years. It would not have made my top 10 to wish for list. Doesn't it ever get boring? No, no, he said. Horribly depressing at times, but never boring. Why depressing? Chiron seems to turn off his hearing again. Oh, look, he said. Annabeth is waiting for us. The blonde girl I'd met at Big House was reading a book in front of the last cabin on the left, number 11. When we reached her, she looked over me critically, like she was thinking about how much I'd ruled. I tried to see what she was reading, but I couldn't make out the title. I thought my dyslexia was acting up, and then I realized the title wasn't even English. The letters looked Greek to me. I mean, literally Greek. There was pictures of temples and statues and different kinds of columns, like in those ancient architectural books. Annabeth, Chiron said, I have a master's archery lesson at noon. Would you take Percy from here? Yes, sir. Cabin 11, Chiron told me, gesturing towards the doorway. Make yourself at home. Out of all the cabins, 11 looked most like a regular old camp cabin, with the emphasis on old. The threshold was worn down, the brown paint peeling. Over the door was one of those doctor symbols, a winged pole, two snakes wrapped around it. What do they call it? A cacetus? Inside of it, it was packed with people, both boys and girls. Way more than the number of bunk beds. Sleeping bags were spread all over the floor. It looked like a gym where the Red Cross had set up an evacuation center. Chiron didn't go in. The tour was too low for him, but the campers saw him. They all stood and bowed respectfully. Well then, Chiron said, good luck, Percy. I'll see you at dinner. He galloped away towards the archery range. I stood in the doorway, looking at the kids. They weren't bowing anymore. They were staring at me, sizing me up. I knew this routine. I'd gone through it at enough schools. Well, Annabeth prompted. Go on. So I naturally had tripped coming in the door and made a total fool of myself. There were some snickers from the campers, but none of them said anything, Annabeth announced. Percy Jackson, meet Cabin 11. Regular or undetermined? Somebody asked. I didn't know what to say, but Annabeth said undetermined. Everybody groaned. The guy who was a little older than the rest came forward. Now, campers, that's what we're here for. Welcome, Percy. You can have that spot on the floor, right over there. The guy was about 19, and he looked pretty cool. He was tall and muscular, with a short cropped sandy hair and a friendly smile. He wore an orange tank top, cut off sandals, and a leather necklace with 5 different colored clay beads. The only thing settling about his appearance was a thick white scar that ran from just beneath his right eye to his jaw, like an old knife slash. This is Luke, Annabeth said. Her voice sounded different somehow. I glanced over and could have sworn she was blushing. She saw me looking, and her expression hardened again. He's your counselor for now. For what? I asked. You're undetermined, Luke explained patiently. They don't know what cabin to put you in, so you're here. Cabin 11 takes all the newcomers, visitors. Naturally, we would. Hermes, our patron, is the god of travelers. I looked at the tiny section of the floor they had given me. I had nothing to put there, to mark it as my own. No luggage, no clothes, no sleeping bag. Just the Minotaur's horn, and I thought about setting that down, but then I remembered that Hermes was also the god of thieves. I looked around the campers' faces, some sullen, suspicious. some grinning stupidly, some eyeing me as if they were waiting for a chance to pick my pockets. How long will I be here? I asked. Good question, Luke said. Until you're determined. How long will that take? Campers all laughed. Come on, Annabeth told me. I'll show you the volleyball court. I've already seen it. Come on. She gripped my wrist and dragged me outside. I could hear the kids of Cabot 11 laughing behind me. When we were a few meters away, Annabeth said, Jackson, you have to do better than that. What? She rolled her eyes and mumbled under her breath. Can't believe I thought you were the one. What's your problem? I was getting angry now. All I know is I kill some bull guy. Don't talk like that, Annabeth told me. You know how many kids at this camp wish they'd had your chance to get killed? To fight the Minotaur. What do you think we trained for? I shook my head. Look, the thing I really thought was the Minotaur, like the same one in the stories. Yes. Then there's only one. Yes. And he died, like a gajillion years ago. Theseus killed him in the labyrinth. So... Monsters don't die, Percy. They can be killed, but they don't die. Oh, thanks. That clears it up. They don't have souls, like you and me. You can dispel them for a while, maybe even a whole lifetime if you're lucky. But they are primal forces. Chiron calls them archetypes. Eventually they reform. I thought about Miss Dodds. You mean if I killed one accidentally with a sword? Yeah, I mean your math teacher. Yeah, that's right. She's still out there. You just made her very, very mad. How did you know about Miss Dodds? You talk in your sleep. Almost called her something. A fury? They're Hades torturers, right? Annabeth glanced nervously at the ground as she expected it to open it up and swallow her. You shouldn't call them by that name. Even here. We call them the kindly ones, if we have to speak of them at all. Look, is there anything we can say without it thundering? I sounded whiny, even to myself, but right then I didn't care. Why do I have to stay in a cabin out 11 anyway? Why is everyone so crowded together? There's plenty of empty bucks right over there. I pointed to the first few cabins and Annabeth turned pale. You don't just choose a cabin, Percy. It depends on who your parents are, or your parent. She stared at me, waiting for me to get it. My mom is Sally Jackson, I said. She works at a candy store in Grand Central Station. At least she used to. Sorry about your mom, Percy, but that's not what I meant. I'm talking about your other parent. Your dad? He's dead. I never knew him. Annabeth sighed. Clearly she had this conversation before with other kids. Your father's not dead, Percy. How can you say that? You know him? Of course not. And how can you say? Because I know you. You wouldn't be here if you weren't one of us. You don't know anything about me. No. She raised an eyebrow. I bet you moved around from school to school. Bet you were kicked out of a lot of them. How? Diagnosed with dyslexia. And probably ADHD, too. I tried to swallow my embarrassment. What does that have to do with anything? Taken together. It's almost a sure sign. The letters float off the page when you read, right? It's because your mind is hardwired for ancient Greek. The ADHD, you're impulsive. You can't sit still in a classroom. That's your battlefield reflexes. In a real fight, they keep you alive. As for your attention problems, it's because you see too much, Percy. Not too little. Your senses are better than a regular mortal's. Of course your teachers want you medicated. Most of them are monsters. They don't want you seeing them for what they are. You sound like you went through the same thing? Most of the kids here did. If you weren't like us, you couldn't have survived the Minotaur, much less ambrosia and nectar. Ambrosia and nectar. The food and drink we were giving you to make you better. That stuff would have killed a normal kid. It would have turned your blood into fire, your bones into sand, and you'd be dead. Face it. You're a half-blood. A half-blood. I was reeling with so many questions I didn't really know where to start. And then a husky voice yelled, Well, a newbie. I looked over. The big girl from the ugly red cabin was sauntering towards us. She had 3 other girls behind her, all big, ugly, and mean-looking like her, all wearing camo jackets. Clarice, Annabeth sighed. Why don't you go polish your sphere or something? Sure, Miss Princess, the girl said, so I can run you through with it Friday night. Let's cook this, Annabeth said, which I somehow understood was Greek for go to the crows, though I had a feeling it was a worse curse than it sounded. You don't stand a chance. Well, we'll pulverize you, Clarice said, but her eye twitched. Perhaps she wasn't so sure she could follow through on the threat. She turned towards me. Who's this little runt? Percy Jackson, Annabeth said. Meet Clarice, daughter of Ares. I blinked, like the war god? Clarice sneered. You got a problem with that? No, I said, recovering my wits. Explains the bad smell. Clarice growled. We got an initiation ceremony for newbies, Prissy. Percy. Whatever. Come on, I'll show you. Clarice, Annabeth tried to say. Stay out of it, wise girl. Annabeth looked pained, but she did stay out of it, and I didn't really want her to help. I was a new kid. I had to earn my own rep. I handed Annabeth my Minotaur horn and got ready to fight, but before I knew it, Clarice had me by the neck and was dragging me towards a cinder block building that I immediately knew was the bathroom. I was punching and kicking. I'd been in plenty of fights before, but this big girl Clarice had hands like iron. She dragged me into the girls' bathroom. There was a line of toilets on one side and a line of shower stalls on the other. It smelled like just any public bathroom, and I was thinking, as much as I could think with Clarice ripping my hair out, if this place belonged to the gods, they should have been able to afford classier toilets. Clarice's friends were all laughing, and I was trying to find the strength I'd used to fight the Minotaur, but it just wasn't there. I think he's big 3 material, Clarice said as she pushed me towards one of the toilet. Yeah, right. Minotaur probably fell over laughing. So stupid looking. Her friend snickered. Annabeth stood in the corner, watching through her fingers. Clarice bent me over on my knees and started pushing my head toward the toilet bowl. It reeked like rusted pipes and, well, like goes into toilets. I strained to keep my head up. I was looking at the scummy water thinking, I will not go into that. I won't. And then, something happened. I felt a tug in the pit of my stomach. I heard a plumbing rumble, the pipe shudder. Clarice's grip on my hair loosened. Water shot out of the toilet, making an arc straight over my head. Next thing I knew, I was sprawled on the bathroom tiles with Clarice screaming behind me. I turned just as the water blasted out of the toilet again, hitting Clarice straight in the face, so hard it pushed her down onto her butt. The water stayed on her like spray from a fire hose, pushing her backwards into the shower stall. She struggled, gasping, and her friends started coming towards her. But then the other toilets exploded too. 6 more streams of water blasted them back. The showers acted up too, and together all the fixtures sprayed the camouflage girls right out of the bathroom, spinning them around like pieces of garbage being washed away. As soon as they were out of the door, I felt the tug in my gut lessen. The water shut off as quickly as it started. The entire bathroom was flooded, and Annabeth hadn't been spared. She was dripping wet, but she hadn't been pushed out the door. She was standing in exactly the same place, staring at me in shock. I looked down and I realized I was sitting in the only dry spot in the entire room. There was a circle of dry floor around me. I didn't have one drop of water on my clothes. Nothing. I stood up, my legs shaking. Annabeth said, How did you... I don't know. We walked to the door. Outside, Clarice and her friends sprawled in the mud. A bunch of other campers gathered around to gawk. Clarice's hair was flattened against her face. Her camouflage jacket was sopping. She smelled like sewage. She gave me a look of absolute hatred. You are dead, new boy. You are totally dead. I probably should have let it go, but I said, You want to gargle with toilet water again, Clarice? Close your mouth. Her friends had to hold her back. They dragged her towards cabin 5, while the other campers made their way to avoid her flailing feet. Annabeth stared at me. I couldn't tell whether she was just grossed out or angry at me for dousing her. What? I demanded. What are you thinking? I'm thinking, she said, that I want you on my team for Capture the Flag. I believe that is the end of Chapter 6. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Tune in next time, and we will be reading Chapter 7. My dinner goes up in smoke. As always, the VODs will be posted on my YouTube, and have a wonderful, wonderful evening.